Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. Can Ken and Barbie ever get along? The secret to true equality. This program is dedicated by Barbara Wine in honor of her birthday, with thanks to Hashem for being taken out of exile and delivered to the promised land. Okay. Ken and Barbie. Yeah. Makes me smile as well, as I know it has many of you. What some once coined the battle of the sexes, of the genders, that goes back from the beginning of time, of history. And nobody's really been able to ever solve this issue. Men and women truly getting along, can we truly be equal, even if we're different? And the reason for that, of course, is quite obvious. Number one, men and women do have different wiring. They function differently, and sometimes they contradict each other in their styles. Not about who's better or who's worse. Secondly, we have ego. When ego gets into play, the one that has more power often tries to dominate. And we've seen male hierarchies that have abused and dominated over women, women rebelling in return, demanding equality, the women's suffrage movement turning into the feminist movement, demanding equality at the workplace, equality at home, ultimately gaining the right to vote, and the many different inroads that women have achieved. But the fact remains that at work and in leisure, you still have plenty of challenges. And even sexual harassment. Yes, a lot of it has become, you can litigate, you can sue, you can challenge, but there's still the human nature part of it. And sexuality, by definition, is I don't want to call it a battle, but it's definitely each party's trying to get something. The drive, whether it's the drive for pleasure, the drive for control, the drive for influence, the drive that makes you feel fulfilled, in each individual affects how we interact with each other, and it's prone to people abusing, if they can, a situation. Abuse can take very overt forms. It could also take subtle forms. Remember a guy telling me he felt he was some major achievement. He says, I think I've mastered the art of being able to be in a relationship without any commitment. So I said, does your girlfriend know about that as well? He says, no, not yet. He has to figure out how to let her know. So he saw it as a conquest, as some type of, like he wanted a medal for it. And I said to myself, and I said to him, I said, isn't a relationship part of the relationship is commitment? But he doesn't want to have any strings attached. So we want to have what we want. So it feeds into our narcissism, into selfishness. I mean, the list goes on. And especially when it gets into the emotional realm of intimacy and sexuality. I mean, bedroom politics, and so on and so forth. So I've set up here, we all know the issue. We all know the problem. Is there indeed a solution? I will submit there is. However, it requires rewiring, or I would say reframing and revisiting the topic from its inception, going back to the drawing board, from its inception. In other words, you can't just put some Band-Aids on and do some legislation here and so on. It really comes down to how we see ourselves. So I want to introduce to you a word. It's a word I've already spoken about a number of times. It's a word from Hebrew, and it's cited in Kabbalistic and mystical and Hasidic texts. Very powerful word, very, very hard to translate into English. Maybe because the language, the culture doesn't fully tolerate it. But it's a very powerful word. And the word is bittul. B-I-T-T-U-L is the way it's transliterated. It means it's a combination of modesty, humility, but I would like to call it mostly suspending yourself in the presence of something greater than yourself. It's a form of transcendence. So it's not about me, it's not an extension of me, it's about experiencing something beyond me. Another word you could use for this is actually commitment, dedication. Dedication to something that's not yourself, not dedicated to yourself. It's something greater than yourself. And you stand in awe of beautiful sight in nature. You feel awe listening to a powerful piece of music. You're mesmerized by a piece of art or reading something, absorbed. You lose yourself in something greater than yourself. It is the most gratifying and the most powerful of all experiences, and it's actually what allows us to really become something greater than ourselves. And in the context of love and relationships, and especially men and women, it's a critical point. When you introduce that ingredient, there's hope. Without that ingredient, you could have people care about each other, but at the end of the day, it's about mutual benefit and the unconditional aspect of letting go and truly being vulnerable and allowing yourself to experience something through another beyond yourself, not really possible. So what it comes down to is this. It's not just about men and women, it's also women and women and men and men. It's really all human beings. True coexistence is not just mutual reciprocity, where people, it's a give and take. That's a business relationship. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. I'll give you the money if you produce these and these results, and so on. That's fine. That's a transactional relationship. But when it comes to something deeper, we need to introduce something beyond our egos and beyond our own parameters. And for that, you need to really be able to step back and say, it's not about me. I want to experience something beyond me. So can Ken and Barbie really get along? Yes, they can get along if they introduce something beyond their own parameters. And this is where the human being can shine in ways that no other creature can. Look at nature. Everything in nature essentially is pretty much predictable. It's clockwork. I'm not talking now about on the quantum level, I'm talking about on the macroscopic level. You can tell when the sun will rise for the next who knows how much time. You know how animals will behave, how plants function. They all are set in motion. They have a program. Some are complex programs. They're all complex programs. But they're programs that you can study and then predict what happens next. And when I say predict, I don't mean possibilities. Absolute guarantee. This is called cause and effect of physics. You throw up an object, it's going to fall always the same way if it's the same weight, and so on. Called the billiard ball effect. You strike a billiard ball, the right angle, with the right speed, the right motion, and so on. It's always going to have the same result. If you do it a little differently, obviously if the cause is different, the result will be different. So it's a very predictable, deterministic universe. What about the human being? So there was a philosopher, scientist, Laplace, a French philosopher in the late 19th century, who claimed that if you give me all the data about anything, including a human being, I can predict exactly what they will do till the end of time. The only reason we can't predict is because we don't have all the data, we don't have all the information. It actually created, obviously, an uproar in the church and religious circles because there's suddenly no free will. It means we're all machines and programs. Now, obviously, that did change because, especially with the introduction of quantum mechanics and the uncertainty principle, and knowing that there's a state that is indeterministic, so that we know today it's not just a matter of lack of data and lack of information, that there are fundamentally states that are states of probability, words of Niels Bohr or other physicists. So that, in a way, demonstrates that there's another dimension. But getting back to our point, what you come to realize is that if we were all hardwired, so that's how it is. A lion and a lioness are hardwired, and there's a certain way they behave in the time of when they breed, or the time when they hunt, the time when they take care of their young, and you can predict it. You know exactly what's going to happen. And the same thing with all the other creatures, whether it's animals or plants, the world of the vegetable world or the mineral world. And the same is with the celestial bodies in space. Are there unpredictable things? Of course, because accidents happen and all kinds of other aberrations and so on, mutations. But Overall, it's a clock. Comes to the human being, if we were that way, then you could say, listen, men and women are wired a certain way, and they will never change. Men will be men, women will be women. And yet, there's another dimension we call the soul. The soul is not a deterministic entity. Yes, it has its rules and it has its parameters just as everything has, but it adds a dimension that allows us to go outside of the realm of determinism, outside of the realm of structure, because it's connecting to something that put the structure in place in the first place, something transcendent. But the only way into that place is through bittul. As long as you are defined by yourself and your needs, then you have basically written your own script. Your needs will define who you are, and therefore men and women will have their give and take, and if it works, it works, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But ultimately, it's going to be self-interest that's the driving force. But if you introduce this dimension, what happens is it pierces a hole in the glass ceiling of parameters of structure. It allows us to move from the deterministic into the indeterministic. And that's where you have the secret to true equality. You will find there are people, it may not be a minority, where you can have people with different interests, men and women, and their personalities are their personalities, but they are able to forego, they're able to transcend, to get beyond their wiring. And that's where you have the magic. You have true love. Love not based on needs, but love based on transcendence. Not based on what you're getting, but based on what you're giving. And that opens up the door to the possibility of equality. Equality does not mean clones. Equality does not mean that everybody has to do exactly the same thing. Equality means harmony within diversity, that two people can completely appreciate each other, even if they're different. But they respect it, and as a matter of fact, they celebrate their differences. Because you can teach me something I would not have learned on my own. If you become like me, or you just follow my guidelines, and you follow my interests, then I'm just getting more of myself. But you come to embrace the fact that that the other can contribute something you don't have on your own, and the other person feels the same way, then you have the magic. Then you have the symphony. Then you have the many different musicians and different instruments, each playing their instrument, complementing the other, and the other complementing them. And then you create the synergy that's more than the sum of the parts. Now I know it sounds romantic and it sounds very beautiful on paper. When it comes down to it, fact of the matter, people have their needs. No problem, needs are fine, but do not be defined by your needs. And above all, remember your needs are one part of the picture. There's also what about the need for growth, the need to get beyond your needs, to put it in different terms. And that's where you open up new vistas and new horizons. Now, if you think about it, there's nothing new I'm saying here. All forms of growth are that. If growth would be built on purely the previous paradigms, we'd never really grow. We just have an extension of the past. But everything in growth is a form of metamorphosis. It's a transition. True growth is going to be a seed will rot, deteriorate in the ground before it turns into a sapling. You have to melt a piece of gold to turn it into an ornament. Shed one layer of skin to assume a new layer of skin. You have to shed a previous stereotype or limited knowledge if you want to gain new knowledge. If you're stuck in your old preconceived notions, that's what you'll have. Or as they say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Or as I like to say, if you think what you thought, you say what you said, and you do what you did, you know what you're going to have? What you had. It's a mathematical certainty. However, when there's that shift, and that's what allows, using again mystical language, that there's a paradigm, and then there's a void or a vacuum, in a sense like the deteriorating state, where the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, into the cocoon, and then it turns into a butterfly. That type of metamorphosis requires 3 steps of paradigm number 1, a void and a vacuum, that is sense like in a way that transforms the situation, but it's a vacuum, and leading to a new paradigm, a paradigm shift. all growth. There's no growth that doesn't happen that way. Creativity is a child of frustration. You gather information, more information, you get confused, overwhelmed, but then you start seeing the light. A new picture emerges. That is the true level of growth. All that captures the concept of bittul that I've been describing. And with human beings, and women and men, especially when they're in the emotional throes of their needs, they need that more than ever. And when you can master that, in a way it's not mastering it, it masters you, you have something that will be a complete transformational experience. Imagine man and woman, partners, spouses, being able to embrace the other for what they are, not for what they are for you, not in your terms. Imagine both of them able to do that. Just think about what the possibilities are. And I've seen it in reality, so it's not just a theory. But you do need to get out of the habit and of the thinking of our past way of thinking, which is about me. It's me, me, me. And we live in a society that encourages that type of thinking. Take care of yourself because no one else will. But there are areas. True love is actually the celebration of vulnerability and the celebration of allow yourself to let go. You don't need to control everything. The more you try to control it, the more it becomes part of who you are. The more you let go, new things will emerge. That's how it works. It emerges. New things emerge. And that is ultimately, yes, the secret to true equality with women and men, which is essentially the concept. You've seen a Jewish wedding, you'll see the canopy, the chuppah, as it's called. What does the canopy represent? Transcendence. A canopy that transcends, that's above and hovers above both male and female, both man and woman, both partners, something above that they both subject themselves to. That's called true transcendence. Now, as I said before, this is not just in love and relationships and women and men, it's about all our experiences. But when it comes to, especially to the genders, that's where it's so pronounced and so prominent. So, my friends, a few practical suggestions to get to that place. If you have a significant other in your life, and you do have a conflict, different opinions, how to do something, different ideologies, how do you deal with a conflict like that? So most people, especially if it's a deep-rooted conflict or a long-standing one, ultimately learn to just, okay, you know what, we agree to disagree, you don't like confrontation, so you avoid it. Others are constantly on a collision course, banging heads against each other, each one trying to demonstrate that I'm right. And it could be a constant battle, a perpetual battle, a battle of the sexes, if you wish. And then, yes, there are those that find reconciliation, either they mediation or they go to therapy, and they find some middle ground. But there's a fourth approach. The fourth approach is thinking, and putting yourself in the shoes of another. Instead of trying to say, okay, here's what I want, here's what you want, let's find some middle ground. I'm not denying that as value, but I want to try something new. Put yourself in the shoes of another. How do we begin? Ask the significant other, man, woman, or woman, man, however it is, and say, I know we have this disagreement, a different approach to things. I want you to share with me your position. I'm going to, let's go back there. I want, not in the throes of any conflict or confrontation, just in a very pleasant way. I want to repeat to you your position and tell me if I'm repeating it properly. I just want to see if I can put myself in your shoes and see it through your eyes. And it's one of the hardest things to do, by the way, because if you disagree with someone, it's very hard for you to repeat what they're saying because you're going to always inevitably stick in some caveat that will undermine that argument because you have a different approach. So the mere fact that you can do it, I said, by the way, it's not so by the way. The mere fact that you can do it is already a step in the direction of transcendence. But essentially what you're doing is you're putting yourself aside, and I'm not suggesting you have to change your opinion right away, but you're allowing another person to speak. And more than that, you're repeating what they're saying. I've got this idea from a Talmudic statement with the classic Shammai and Hillel, with two great sages who disagreed on different matters. And ultimately, the consensus was to follow Hillel's opinion in most cases. The reason was because he was more humble. They were both humble, but he was more humble. How do we know? He preceded Shammai's argument before his own. Usually you say your argument, and then you say, and by the way, there's another dissenting opinion. And you usually don't give it equal time, and you don't present it quite the same way, because you want your opinion to prevail. But Hillel would do the opposite. He would present his adversary's opinion and present it completely in a convincing way, and then he would present his opinion. The ability to do that is the demonstration of a bittul that allows you to open yourself up to new horizons. Now, you can go and do that, then say, let me go back now to my opinion, and still come away and say, I still think my opinion is more correct. But what you've done is you've respected the other, and you may even learn from it. Remember, at the end, the conclusion can be a combination of both opinions. Each one has certain strengths, certain weaknesses. But what you've done is you've opened up your world to a world beyond your own perspective. It's like climbing the mountain. You see a wider horizon. Besides that, it engenders and cultivates trust that another person sees. You're able to see it through my eyes, even if you agree or disagree. But the mere fact you can do it is a sign of tremendous respect. Now, there are many other examples of how to do this. I just shared one, but it's an attitude. Think about it. Think about doing the counterintuitive move, doing something that goes against what your grain would be, which is either to dig in or definitely not to change your position. Now, obviously, this does not mean you're wrong. It just means that you may be right, but it's not always important for that to be the final say. Sometimes you do things that's not. If it's something dangerous or something you feel is really destructive, always good to go to a third party to confirm that and not to over-exaggerate it as well, and so on. So, okay. So with that said, I think what we can say, Barbie is a film that came out this year, and it's interesting. It's a part of culture today, so it's a very good opportunity. And Barbie and the alter ego, but the male counterpart, Ken. So Ken and Barbie, conclusion, at least in this program, is they can get along. And not just can they get along, but they can find element of equality where they complement each other. They complement each other. And to conclude with the words of the Kotzker Rebbe, which I love so much, really captures it. He said, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am not, and you are not. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am and you are. If my identity is defined in juxtaposition to you, in other words, I need to know who you are before I know who I am, and vice versa, then we both never be. But if I'm a full entity, and you're a full entity, and it's generated from within, I am I because I am I, you are you because you are you, then you come together. Come together. Links in a chain, each one contributing their unique and indispensable music and song. Then you have something that's more than the sum of the parts, what we call the synergy. The synergy that's generated when you're able to get out of your own ego, out of your own space, your own parameters, and another person is able to do the same. New horizons, new possibilities. Try it out. What's there to lose? Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Please subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. Please share. I'd love to hear feedback, thoughts, comments, suggestions, ideas, especially on a topic like this that is so relevant and continuously to be both timeless and timely, affecting us all. Be blessed and be well. Thank you.